Alright, I am back with a new video. I was going to make something about the new Destiny PvP maps or Hades 2 launching, which I have been playing, which unsurprisingly is great. Instead, the industry had other plans, and now I am forced to talk about just a bizarre, brutal situation at Microsoft. Today, I saw Jason Schreier was about to report this at Bloomberg, but then Microsoft tweeted about it like 40 seconds later. Microsoft announced they are shutting down Arcane Austin, Tango Gameworks, Alpha Dog Studios, and Roundhouse Games. You probably don't know the last two of those. They're smaller studios that have worked on a few things, supported some other things. Roadhouse is being rolled up with larger ZeniMax projects. But obviously the big stories are Arcane Austin and Tango Gameworks, at sort of opposite ends of the spectrum here in terms of why they would be shut down, if that is appropriate. So we'll start with Arcane Austin. This is the branch of Arcane that made Redfall. So at baseline, you may understand why this is happening. I don't know how much I need to go through the disaster of Redfall again. I've talked about this many times. I maintain it as one of the worst AAA games I've ever played. I'm not going to try to rub salt in any wounds here, but it was poorly received. Certainly, I know it was not what Microsoft was hoping. They literally said that out loud. The game had a ton of development issues. It lost something like 70% of its staff as they were working on it. It got retooled. Microsoft took a look at it and just sort of shrugged after the acquisition. Was like, yeah, okay, release it. And here we are. So while this may not be like totally unexpected, that was a full year ago. And at the time, at least a month after launch, Matt Booty said specifically, there are no current plans to shut down Arcane Austin. And the idea was that they're going to move on to other projects. I guess Current was doing a lot of work there, as they said that today it's being shut down. So they changed their mind. And some people are going to other Bethesda projects, but there will be layoffs. We don't know how many people are going. This is not to be confused with Arcane Lion, which is working on the Blade game for Microsoft. Though if I was at any of these branches, I would not feel terribly safe right now. I think it's the president of Arcane Lion, like just straight up took to Twitter and was like ripping Microsoft, saying it was like a fucking gut punch. I think that's a direct quote. So needless to say, he's not happy about seeing all those colleagues laid off. I think there were about 100 people in Arcane Austin, and again, we don't know how many are laid off, how many are moving on. So like any layoffs are brutal. Redfall was an extremely, extremely high profile failure. So this is not like the wildest thing I've ever heard of. Whenever we talk about like review score drama and whatever, and whether a 5 out of 10 is average, blah, blah, blah. And like my friend's always like a 6 out of 10 can shut down a studio. And I think Redfall is a 60. And that's not a call to give games higher scores to save studios, nor is it saying that, like, you know, that's a good thing. It's just a matter of fact. Games that are that high profile, that review that poorly, do serious damage to the studio. And this is another example of this happening, where a poorly reviewed game at that level has shut down a studio. They did answer the question about what about additional Redfall content, like the 2 characters that were supposed to come out. Those are not happening. Obviously, now they did say, I thought they said a couple months ago they were coming this year, but I don't think people working at the studio were expecting Xbox to just come in and shut them down after previously saying they weren't. Players will get some sort of credit or something if they bought that pack, but yeah. The bigger story is certainly Tango Gameworks. And for those of you unfamiliar with Tango Gameworks, you might not recognize it by name, but they did the Evil Within series, they did Ghostwire Tokyo, and most recently, they did Hi-Fi Rush. Hi-Fi Rush, the shadow drops, incredibly well received, multiple nominations, highly praised Xbox exclusive that, you know, I think you can say it is the best Xbox exclusive of this generation. It's not the biggest budget or whatever, and, you know, Starfield is 1,000 times its size or whatever, but like pound for pound, it is probably the best game of this Xbox generation. And right after it launched, Microsoft was like, this is like, you know, we're so happy with the reception. Like, this has surpassed all of our expectations by every metric. Literally, that's like a direct quote. And, sure enough, a year later, whatever it is, a year and a half, it's dead. They shut down the whole studio. And both this and Arcane Austin, they published these just like bleak, black image, white text things about like, hey, we're shut down. Thanks for everything. And like theirs was like 3 sentences. And like, no one can believe this. No one can believe Microsoft shut down Tango, that a company that has produced one of the most creative games in years, and they're one of their highest profile, best received releases since the Xbox Series XS generation launched. I know that there is, maybe some sort of intermediary factor here where the CEO left the company a while back, but like that wasn't like some sort of Microsoft drama thing. Like interviews with him said he wanted to leave like years and years ago. I think he said 8 years, and he was like sticking around because he felt he like owed it to his team. But like that guy wanted to leave for a very long time, and it wasn't some sort of recent drama or fight or something. So theoretically, you would think that Microsoft would be able to come in and supervise and be like, hey guys, you're a great team. You just made this great game. What can we do next? And we don't know what happened behind the scenes, but it sure doesn't make Microsoft look very good, as they just shut down the studio that made such an amazing game. And I don't think Microsoft knows what they're doing. Like, yes, okay, there are lots of layoffs in the industry, and it's always brutal. But like, the Tango shutdown is one of the crazier things I think I've ever seen. This isn't like, oh, we overhired in COVID and like, we're reducing by 8%, or like, oh, we're just being greedy to like squeeze some value from the shareholders. Like, this is a small studio that produced a great game that should be able to garner the support and leadership of $1 trillion company. And however much they were, costing or whatever, either if they were sort of failing to create a new game, I would say that's on Microsoft for not being able to, fashion new leadership after the CEO left, or not being able to guide them to the right project. If they were working on a new game, or shut it down anyway, that's even worse. I like, I don't have any idea why this would have happened. And at a certain point, like I think you can only, do this so many times before you really have to start to question Xbox leadership. And like, I think the thing with Xbox leadership is like they're very like camera front, like everybody, Phil Spencer comes off like a cool guy, like a guy you'd want to sit down with. Matt Booty's cool, Sarah Bond is cool. Like all these people are like chill seeming people. They're not your Bobby Koticks or your CEOs of kind of other places. Like they're not normal CEOs and executives, they're cool executives. Like, but in terms of like actual decision making, I can't get behind so many of the things that they've done your entire tenures. Like again, like Phil Spencer's like this big, I'm not Don Metric, I'm coming in to save everything. But like, what is that happened? Like, no, they've permanently lost the console race. One of the theories is that like Game Pass development is slowing, or Game Pass signups are slowing so much, Microsoft has to go back to like making very profitable games, which releasing them in Game Pass is hard. And that's why we've seen expansions to other platforms. But in this case, it's like, who is making these kinds of decisions here? And what about like the current state of Xbox indicates that they need to shutter a developer like Tango? I think it was Matt Booty today that had a statement about how they're going, undergoing, it was just really corporate bullshit. Like they're undergoing restructuring, and like they're reworking things to like feed into like their larger game projects, and like, they said a refocus on our core properties. So like that means less small games that can be giant hits, like Hi-Fi Rush. By giant hit, I mean at least critical. I think maybe there was the concern that not enough people played it because it was too niche. It was, this music game, whatever. And that may have led to, a dollars and cents decision here. But like with Game Pass, it's like so hard to, at one point, like you need to credit like just having a really good game from a first party, or from a exclusive studio, take that win, as opposed to just being like, oh, well, the engagement numbers weren't high enough compared to blah, blah, blah. And like, oh, we ported it to Sony 2 years later, like, and that didn't sell as much as we wanted it to, or what. Like, you have to look past that stuff and be a little more human with this. And what Matt Booty's saying is like, all I interpret that is like they're doing, they're feeding Call of Duty more people again. Like we've seen no indication that Call of Duty plans to stop doing its yearly expansions yet. They've kind of talked about that in the past, but there's no indication that's going to happen. Microsoft, I don't think, wants that to happen because that's such a giant moneymaker from the $70 billion they spent on mostly getting Call of Duty. King printing money for mobile is the other big aspect of that. And I wonder if like a refocus on core games is something like Microsoft getting freaked out that they don't have a new Fallout game in development at all, essentially, because there's all this praise for the series right now, and they have nothing. They have nothing on deck. They have no one working on a game, even if they say they want someone working on a game. Bethesda getting to Fallout 5 is 7 to 10 years away. Other studios probably should have been on this already. They're not. Again, poor planning on their end. And after all this time, like all these acquisitions, like there's so little to show for it. Where I personally like Starfield, that's not exactly the big Bethesda mega hits overall that we've seen compared to past Elder Scrolls and Fallout games. They could talk about the most Bethesda players ever at launch, but like it's a friggin' Game Pass game. It doesn't count the same way. And we have stuff like Halo Infinite, which launched terribly and took forever to get its multiplayer into like a pretty solid state. But like for many players, it's just too late. That game is not doing the numbers nearly it should be on Xbox and has not for a while. So that's why something like Hi-Fi Rush really stood out, because as all these sort of big budget games faltered, it was one that really like came out of nowhere and we're like, oh, okay, Xbox is still cultivating and recognizing talent, and they're able to, pull tricks like this out of their hat. And like, again, future stuff like Perfect Dark and Fable, and like how much faith can we have at those at this point, just given the what these studios have produced so far under Microsoft leadership. Like it's so, they did this to try and match Sony and Nintendo in terms of first party stuff. They can talk about how they don't care about console sales matching. They at least need their games matching. But now they're even moving away from that, where it's like, oh, well, we're not competing with exclusives per se. Like you can get them all on PC, you can get them all on Game Pass. Now eventually you can get a lot of them on PlayStation. The ones that will physically work, maybe we'll put the Switch. But like, it feels like they're floundering. And I guess the games division is still pulling in, profits and stuff, but I think Game Pass is hitting a ceiling. I think cloud growth is going to be extremely slow, even though they have so many eggs in that basket. Their first party cultivation has not gone as planned. I would say so far. Maybe that will change in the coming years, but it's already been years. Like how long are we going to wait around for this? And then obviously console sales are half of its competition at best, and they are dropping and dropping and dropping because all Microsoft is doing is giving people fewer and fewer reasons to buy an Xbox. This is not explainable, especially shutting down Tango. Redfall and Arcane is very sad. That's more somewhat logical given the performance of that game. It's still rough, but like Tango and Hi-Fi Rush, it's inconceivable like how badly that got screwed up. And either way, even if the studio was floundering after the CEO left, like that's still on Microsoft to not be able to go in there and sort of guide them through that transition period. So yeah, just totally inexcusable for Microsoft. You can put all your console war BS aside, and like there is no defending that. There just isn't. Like I refuse to believe that they could have not shepherded that studio into making another great game. Like there's just no way. Anyway, so that's the fun news here. I'll get back to other stuff. I'll probably do a Hades video tomorrow maybe. But yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you soon. Take care.